The text came through while I was helping customers at my boutique. I'm leaving you and heading to Miami with my 22-year-old girlfriend. Already cleaned out our joint account, ha ha ha. I didn't even flinch as I read it. My hands stayed steady and my voice stayed calm while I helped Mrs. Whitaker choose a scarf. The only thing that might have given me away was a tiny tightening around my eyes. I waited until Mrs. Whitaker left, her purchase tucked inside our signature silver wrapping paper, before I pulled out my phone and typed a simple reply, "Good luck." My name's Rachel, and at 36 years old I had just received what had to be the coldest goodbye in history. While Eric was probably patting himself on the back, imagining me sobbing into a pillow over his grand betrayal, I was calmly locking up my shop for the night. Honestly, the writing had been on the wall for a while now. All those late nights at work that didn't line up with his paychecks. The sudden need for new passwords on his phone. The way he started hitting the gym like it was a religion, buying new clothes, trying to claw back his lost youth. 3 months back, I stumbled across a receipt for a fancy dinner for two on a night he claimed he was stuck late at work. That same evening, I opened a new savings account at a different bank. A week later, when he suggested we merge our accounts to make life easier, I smiled and nodded, all while quietly moving my personal savings into the new account. That joint account he was so proud to announce he drained? It had just enough in it to keep him from getting suspicious about 2 months' worth of normal deposits. The real money was safe, tucked away, along with carefully organized records of every sketchy transaction he'd made over the past year. My phone buzzed again. "Don't bother begging. Tara and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my stuff later." Tara, the new receptionist at his office. I'd met her at the company Christmas party. I'd seen the way she laughed a little too loud at Eric's jokes. Noticed how she brushed his arm when she thought nobody was paying attention. She was young enough to be his kid and just naive enough to believe she was something special. I didn't waste time replying. Instead, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, the one I'd quietly hired 2 months ago after spotting hotel charges on our credit card bill. "It's time," I said. He just made his move. "The papers are ready," she answered. "I'll file them first thing in the morning. Want him served in Miami?" "No rush," I said. "Let him enjoy his little victory lap first." Another text from Eric popped up. "I know this must be tough. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy." My little shop. The boutique I had built from scratch. The one that pulled in more money than his middle management salary. The business I had kept completely separate from our joint finances, another decision that turned out to be pure luck. I actually smiled, thinking about the stack of certified letters that would be waiting for him in Miami. Let him think he'd gotten the upper hand for a while. That night, I stayed at our house, my house. I'd inherited it from my grandmother and had the good sense to keep it in my name, even after Eric suggested, more than once, that we make it ours. Another bullet dodged. While pulling together paperwork for my lawyer, I found our wedding album. Eric looked so different back then, before the midlife crisis hit like a freight train. Now he squeezed into shirts too tight for his softening waistline. Tried too hard to buddy up to the 20-somethings at work. And threw around slang that sounded ridiculous coming from a man pushing 43. My phone kept lighting up with his texts, each one more arrogant than the last. "I've been planning this for months. Tara gets me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone your own age. Already told my family, they agree we grew apart. No hard feelings." I took screenshots of every message, adding them to my growing file of evidence. Let him keep talking, he was digging his own grave. My lawyer would have a field day with his admissions of cheating. His bragging about draining our account. One last text caught my eye. "By the way, use the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my goodbye gift, LOL. Perfect." I grabbed the phone and called the credit card company. "Mrs. Morgan speaking," I said. "I need to report fraud and cancel a card immediately." "Of course, ma'am. Can you tell me which charges?" 2 first-class tickets to Miami booked today. Hotel stay at the Royal Palm. And I'll need my husband removed as an authorized user. Do you have any proof of the fraud?" "I sure do. I've got text messages where he admits it. I can send them over right now." I heard the satisfaction in the rep's voice, even though she stayed professional as she canceled the charges. Eric and Tara would show up at the airport tomorrow and find out their fancy plans had gone up in smoke. No tickets. No hotel. Nothing. My phone buzzed again. "Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller." I laughed out loud. Did he really think he had any claim on my grandmother's house? Did his ego get so big he forgot whose name was on the deed? Another ping. And I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair deal for your half. My half. Of my business. The one I built with my own 2 hands while he griped about my long hours, calling it a hobby. I poured myself a glass of the good wine, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. This sure felt like one. Tomorrow, Eric would learn a few things about property laws and separate assets he probably should have studied before running off to Miami. That night, I let the quiet settle in around me and started thinking about what my next chapter might look like. Morning came with a fresh batch of angry texts from Eric. What the heck did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. I muted my phone and headed to my boutique. Fridays were always our busiest days, and I had a brand new shipment of designer handbags to unpack. Life doesn't stop just because your husband bolts with a receptionist young enough to call you ma'am. Around noon my phone rang again. This time it was Eric's mother. Rachel, honey, she started. Eric told us everything. Said you were too controlling. Said you drove him away. She paused, then added, he says you're being spiteful now, messing up his travel plans. I switched the call to speakerphone and went back to arranging a new window display. Did he also mention draining our joint account and using our shared credit card to buy plane tickets for him and his girlfriend? I asked. Silence. Then she said a little softer, well, he told us you left him no choice. That you were cold. Distant. Linda, I said, keeping my voice even, I have the texts. Would you like me to read them out loud? The one where he brags about taking our money? Or the one where he mocks me for my age? Another long pause. He did seem a little cruel, she finally admitted. I told him that message wasn't appropriate. I appreciate the call, Linda. Really I do. But I think it's best we end this conversation now, I said politely. My lawyer has advised me to keep contact with Eric's family to a minimum during the legal proceedings. Proceedings? Already? She said, sounding genuinely surprised. Goodbye, Linda, I said and hung up. By late afternoon, I was hearing through mutual friends that Eric's sister Jenny was already spreading the news. Eric and Tara were holed up at a dingy motel near the airport, their big Miami dream fizzling out fast. Turns out, Eric tried to lean on his personal credit cards, but they had been maxed out for months. Another thing I'd noticed, and quietly made note of months ago. Later, my lawyer gave me an update. The emergency hearing is set for Tuesday, she said. Between his confession about the joint account and the credit card fraud, we have a strong case to freeze everything that's left. Has he been served yet? I asked. Not yet, she said. But don't worry. He'll get the papers delivered straight to his new motel address. She chuckled. And by the way, his girlfriend's been posting all over social media today. She's practically handing us evidence on a silver platter. I smiled to myself, thinking about the mountain of proof I'd collected. Hotel receipts, screenshots, text messages. A whole year's worth of careful preparation. Eric had been so busy planning his big getaway that it never occurred to him I might be watching, quietly getting everything lined up. Another text buzzed in. You think you're so clever, Eric wrote. But I made copies of all the boutique's financial records. Half that business is mine. I forwarded the text straight to my lawyer, adding it to the growing file of Eric's bad decisions. Let him find out the hard way what separate property laws really mean. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's being ready. Tuesday arrived, and the emergency hearing went about as perfectly as I could have hoped. Eric strolled and dressed like he was 20 years younger. Tight designer jeans, a too sleek blazer. Midlife crisis written all over him. Tara sat outside the courtroom, shifting uncomfortably under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her youth and her nerves showed plain as day. Inside, my lawyer laid everything out like clockwork. Eric's own texts bragging about stealing from our accounts, his admissions about the credit card, his sketchy financial history for the past year. Piece by piece, we handed the judge the truth. Eric's lawyer tried to spin it. My client admits to acting impulsively, but Mrs. Morgan's response has been vindictive and calculated. Calculated? My lawyer shot back. You mean prudent? She smiled coolly. My client protected her assets and kept careful records of her husband's suspicious activities. That's not vindictive. That's smart business. The judge flipped through our documentation carefully. The deed to the house in my name only. The business paperwork, my name alone there too. Separate bank accounts. Separate profits. Separate everything. Mr. Morgan, the judge said, looking right at him. You admit via text to deliberately draining a joint account and using shared funds to take your girlfriend on a trip. Is that correct? Eric shifted in his chair, looking like he might melt into it. I was just trying to make a clean break, he mumbled. By committing financial fraud? The judge asked, lifting an eyebrow. And now you're claiming ownership over property that documentation shows has always been separate from marital assets? Eric's lawyer jumped in, fumbling for ground. The business grew during the marriage, Your Honor, so my client is entitled to. The business was started before the marriage, my lawyer cut in sharply. And Mrs. Morgan maintained clear separation between business and personal finances the entire time. We have full financial records backing that up. I watched Eric's face as it all finally hit him. He really thought he could just walk away with half of everything. He never realized all those nights I spent balancing ledgers and keeping accounts weren't just hobbies. They were survival plans. The judge laid it out plain. There's enough evidence of financial misconduct here to freeze all shared assets until final dissolution, he said. Mr. Morgan is ordered to return the missing funds within 48 hours. But the money's gone. Eric blurted out. We spent it on. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it, the judge cut him off coldly. And Mr. Morgan, the judge added. The court frowns heavily on using joint funds to finance affairs. You'd be wise to remember that. Outside the courthouse, I caught a bit of Tara's whining voice as they huddled together. So, what about Miami? The sound of my heels echoed confidently across the marble floor as I headed back to the business Eric never really understood or respected. The next few weeks brought a string of desperate stunts from him. He suddenly claimed the boutique had been his idea. Said he remembered putting money into it when I first started. Tried to paint himself as my silent business partner all along. Every one of those claims crumbled the minute my lawyer showed them the meticulous records I'd kept. He's getting desperate, my lawyer said during one of our calls. His girlfriend's social media says they're crashing at her tiny studio apartment now. Guess living on a receptionist's paycheck wasn't quite the glamorous new life Eric had imagined. His family started reaching out again, only now their tone had changed. Way less judgmental, way more apologetic. We had no idea, Jenny, his sister admitted. He told us you were cold, controlling, that he had to get away. But after seeing his texts, the way he bragged about taking your money, that's not the brother I thought I knew. Even his mom called again, this time crying. The things he said about your age, about trading you in for someone younger. I raised him better than that. Or at least I thought I did. I let their calls go straight to voicemail. Maybe a few weeks earlier, their support might have meant something. Now it just felt like rats jumping off a sinking ship. Meanwhile, the boutique was thriving, actually doing better than ever. Gossip about my situation spread fast in town, and women started coming by on purpose to show support. And most of them didn't leave empty-handed. My ex tried the same thing, one woman said while buying a designer handbag. Thought he'd take everything in the divorce. Men like that never expect us to be smarter. She wasn't wrong. Eric's texts kept trickling in, switching between rage and pathetic pleas. You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we work something out? That business would be nothing without my support. I didn't even answer. Just forwarded each one to my lawyer and kept stacking the evidence. Word got around that Tara was having second thoughts. Apparently, the idea of sharing her cramped apartment with a broke, middle-aged man wasn't so romantic after all. That age gap, which once seemed exciting when they were sneaking around in hotel rooms, felt a lot less cute when it involved splitting rent and overdue utility bills. She posted something about toxic relationships yesterday, my lawyer mentioned during an update call. And this morning she dropped her relationship status altogether. I'll be honest, for half a second, I almost felt bad for Eric. Almost. But then I remembered his haha text, laughing about cleaning out our account. I remembered the nasty jabs about my age. The smug way he assumed I'd be lost without him. Nope. No pity here. What I felt instead was pride. Pride in my careful planning. Pride in my quiet strength. Pride that I protected myself while he never even saw it coming. By the time the final divorce hearing rolled around, Eric looked like a completely different man. Gone was the cocky swagger. Now he sat there, practically vibrating with panic. Tara didn't even bother showing up. Word around the office was she'd moved on, found a new guy her own age. Eric slumped into court wearing old clothes. The fancy designer stuff apparently sold off to help pay back the money he'd stolen. His lawyer looked exhausted, like he was running out of straws to grasp. "Your Honor," he said, giving it one last shot. Despite the separate property documents, my client contributed to the growth of his wife's business through moral support and emotional encouragement. My lawyer jumped in fast. "Moral support?" she said, raising an eyebrow. Would that be these text messages where he belittled her little shop? Or maybe these social media posts where he called it her hobby? The judge didn't need to hear much more. The final settlement went through just like we planned. I kept my house, my boutique, and all my separate assets. Eric got to keep his personal stuff and his car, which, by the way, was worth less than the loan still on it. "You've destroyed me," Eric hissed as we walked out of the courthouse. "I'm gonna have to move back in with my parents." I didn't miss a beat. "No, Eric," I said calmly. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't take me down with you." His mom was waiting outside to pick him up. At 43 years old, he was headed back to his childhood bedroom. The same man who mocked me about aging was now living under his mother's roof again. "You planned this all along," he snapped. "You knew this would happen." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood the value of keeping good records." His mom stepped in between us, sharp and fed up. "That's enough, Eric," she said firmly. "You've embarrassed yourself enough already." As they walked away, I heard her scolding him. "Honestly, Eric, what were you thinking? A 20-year-old? Emptying bank accounts? Sending those horrible texts?" I watched them disappear across the parking lot and felt nothing but peace. No sadness. No anger. Just clean, pure relief. Eric thought he was ending our story with that cruel little text. Instead, he was just setting my plans into motion. My phone buzzed in my hand, not from Eric, not this time, but from new notifications of orders coming in from the boutique's website. Life was moving forward. Just not in the direction Eric thought it would. In the months that followed, I hired 3 new employees and launched an online store that was starting to pick up steam nationwide. Word about Eric's situation trickled back to me through mutual friends. He tried getting back into the dating world, but women his own age didn't have much interest in a middle-aged guy living in his parents' spare room. Younger women, already warned by office gossip, kept their distance too. Apparently, Tara had even shared screenshots of his sad little attempts to win her back after she dumped him. His career wasn't doing any better. HR at his company launched an investigation into his relationship with a subordinate, and Eric ended up with a formal reprimand on his record. The promotion he had been banking on went to someone else. Someone who, notably, hadn't been sneaking around with the reception staff. He tried to claim age discrimination, Ginny told me when she showed up one day at the boutique. Said they were punishing him for dating someone younger. She rolled her eyes. HR just tacked that onto his file too. I hadn't expected to see his sister in my store, but the fact she came at all said everything about how badly Eric had burned his bridges. "I know we didn't support you at first," she said quietly, her fingers brushing over a silk scarf. "He played the victim so well, but seeing how he handled everything, how he acted afterward, I'm honestly ashamed we ever believed him." Meanwhile, my lawyer kept me in the loop about Eric's ongoing legal flailing. He filed one desperate petition after another, trying to challenge the divorce settlement. Each one got tossed out. Every claim about unfair distribution got laughed out of court, thanks to the mountain of evidence he'd so kindly provided himself. He actually tried to argue that his haha text about emptying the account was just a joke, my lawyer said during one update, laughing. The judge asked him if adding LOL made theft less illegal. As the boutique kept growing, something else happened I hadn't really expected: validation. Local business magazines reached out wanting to feature my story, not as a jilted wife, but as a sharp businesswoman who had protected what was hers. Young entrepreneurs started asking me for advice. How to keep business and personal finances separate, how to protect yourself. "The best protection is preparation," I told a young woman one afternoon. She reminded me a little of Tara before everything. "And always trust your gut." Eric's mom still called once in a while, usually after Eric managed to dig himself into another hole. He tried online gambling for a while, chasing a quick fix. Then he got caught up in some pyramid scheme promising fast money. Each new opportunity just buried him deeper. I don't know where we went wrong with him. she sighed during one call. His father and I even offered to help him, if he'd just take responsibility. But he's still pointing fingers. At you, Tara, the company, the judge. Anyone but himself. I listened politely but kept my distance. Their family drama wasn't mine to deal with anymore. My life was moving forward. Plans for a third boutique location were already in the works, and I was thinking about expanding into luxury accessories too. The only thing left to remind me of Eric was a framed screenshot hanging above my office desk. It was his final text before I blocked him. Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age. Right underneath it sat my newest business award. A solid piece of proof that the best revenge really is just living well. Exactly 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a grand opening for my third boutique location. The media showed up, but they weren't there to ask about my failed marriage. They were there to talk about a growing brand and the woman behind it. Eric's betrayal was just a dusty footnote in a much bigger, better story. During the event, Tara showed up. She slipped inside looking small and nervous, clutching her purse like it was a shield. She looked even younger than I remembered. Or maybe I just felt stronger now. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice low. I believed everything he told me. About how you were cold, controlling, that you didn't support his dreams. She swallowed hard. But then I watched him use the same tricks on me when things got tough. I kept arranging a display of designer sunglasses as she spoke. Those weren't dreams, Tara, I said simply. They were escapes. There's a difference. I know that now, she said. She hesitated, then added. He thought he could move into my studio when you froze the accounts. Said it'd just be for a little while. But after 3 weeks of him complaining about my tiny closet, hinting I should take out a loan for a bigger place, I finally got it. I understood what you meant. I actually laughed, a real one this time. Let me guess, I said. He had 100 big plans, all of them depending on later. When his investments paid off. When he got that promotion. When crypto finally hit big. She smiled sadly. Exactly. I'm dating someone my own age now. We've got student loans and a tiny apartment, but at least we're building something real together. After she left, my assistant manager leaned over and whispered, Was that the girlfriend? No, I said, smiling. Just another woman who learned the same lesson I did. I glanced across the store at a young couple admiring our handbags. Speaking of lessons, I said to my manager, let's talk about that new accessories line idea. The boutique had become more than a business. It was a symbol of independence, resilience, and the power of thinking ahead. Young entrepreneurs came to me often now asking for advice. I always told them the same thing. Protect your assets. Trust your instincts. Prepare for everything you hope never happens. One day, Eric's mother called me one last time. Not about Eric this time, but about me. You taught our family a hard lesson, she said quietly. About enabling bad behavior. About making excuses for cruelty. She paused before adding, Eric's still living at home. Still blaming everyone but himself. But we're not covering for him anymore. I thanked her for the call. And as I hung up, I smiled. Grateful to finally be living my life on my own terms. That's your real legacy to our family. Showing us the difference between supporting someone and just enabling them. I thought about that as I reviewed the plans for opening a fourth boutique location. Eric had set out to tear me down. Trade me in for a younger model. Take half of everything I had built with my own 2 hands. Instead, without meaning to, he pushed me to become even stronger, even more successful than before. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my lawyer. Eric filed another petition to revisit the settlement, she wrote. Judge dismissed it immediately. Ordered him to pay court costs too. Thought you'd enjoy hearing that. I smiled to myself, picturing Eric still sitting in his childhood bedroom. Still trying to rewrite an ending that had been set in stone the moment he underestimated me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. 3 years after that cruel little text message, I got an invitation to speak at a national women's business conference. The topic wasn't betrayal. It wasn't divorce. It was about building and protecting a successful business. Somehow my story had moved from a cautionary tale to a source of inspiration. During the Q&A, a woman stood up and asked, My husband says I'm being paranoid about keeping our finances separate. He says marriage means sharing everything. Am I overthinking this? I smiled and answered honestly. My ex-husband said the same thing. Right up until he tried to claim half my business during our divorce. I paused for a second, letting it land. Trust your instincts, I said. Protection isn't paranoia. By then, my boutique chain had grown to 5 locations, each one more successful than the last. The little shop Eric once mucked now employed over 30 people and had been featured in several national magazines. Through the grapevine, I heard Eric had finally moved out of his parents' house into a tiny apartment above somebody's garage. He'd had to take a lower-paying job after his old company downsized. No more fancy titles. No more promotions. Just another name on a paycheck. His dating profile was still floating around, listing him as young at heart, even though the photo he was using was about a decade old. Ironically, Tara had become a regular customer at my first boutique. She'd earned her business degree and started her own social media consulting firm. You inspired me, she told me one day as she checked out, showing that women can actually build something instead of falling for empty promises. I kept Eric's old cruel text framed in my office, not to remind me of pain, but to remind me how far I'd come. Right below it hung a sign that said, "Success is the best revenge." At the 5-year anniversary party for my original boutique, I stood in front of a crowd of employees, customers, and friends. The little store that once fit into a single room was now the flagship of a thriving business empire. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed someone. Eric's mother. I hadn't invited her, but there she was. She waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. "I saw Eric yesterday," she said, smoothing the dress she'd bought from my store. He was still talking about his glory days, about the life he could have had. She shook her head sadly. "He still doesn't understand. He didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it all away." I thought back to that final text. The casual cruelty. The way he expected me to crumble. Expected me to beg. Expected me to prove him right. Instead, I'd done the one thing he never saw coming. I built something stronger. Every boutique location, every new hire, every business milestone. They were living proof of what women can achieve when they stop dimming their light for men who can't handle it. As I spoke with a young saleswoman I'd hired just a month ago. Coincidentally, her name was Tara too. I explained the new inventory system we were rolling out. In the reflection of the store window, I caught a glimpse of myself. And for the first time in a long time, I really saw myself. Not a woman getting older. A woman getting wiser. Stronger. More unstoppable with every year that passed. Eric's text was supposed to be the end of my story. Instead, it was just the beginning. Not just for me, but for every woman who hears my story and realizes she deserves better than being someone else's midlife crisis.